Hi Theatre Thoughts fans. Before we start this episode, please be aware the episode references topics such as mental health, violence, prostitution and suicide. There are links to support services such as Lifeline and Beyond Blue in this episode's description where you can find more information.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is that you surround yourself with really good people and that you network, but not because you want to get a job. You network because you want to find your people, and that you build your own circle because that circle will absolutely be your ticket through.
I think especially as an actor, finding something outside of the theatre world to throw your passion behind is really important. Like for me, it's my history, my studies, and it makes you a more rounded person, a more interesting person, and a person who, you know, isn't tunnel visioned on this is all I can do, because when you hit something like a global pandemic and it's what you can't do, it helps you survive the times where you're not working.
You know, find your collaborators. This is not a solo art form, but the collaborations that I have with my creative team, some of which I've worked with over years and years, and then the process and the collaboration with artists and performers is, you know, I guess why I keep doing it, because it's those relationships and those friendships.
You're listening to the Theatre Thoughts podcast. My name's Justin, or you can call me Stin. We're bringing you a two-part episode today, focusing on one of the most vital sectors of the theatrical world, independent theatre. We're joined by Theatre Travel's artistic coordinator Carly Fisher, performer Sonya Kerr, and director and producer Dino Dimitriadis to discuss their current and past involvements in independent theatre, as well as answering that most important question: how do you make art and survive in the theatre industry? Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Instagram at TheatreThoughtsAUS as we bring you a whole bunch of new episodes this coming month. You can also find behind the scenes content on our TikTok account, theatre_thoughts, as well as our YouTube channel. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this deep dive into independent theatre on the Theatre Thoughts podcast. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Theatre Thoughts podcast. We have a joint episode today, so I'm talking with our first independent theatre artists today. Joining us, we have Carly Fisher and Sonya Kerr, who are currently in rehearsals for the Sweet Science of Bruising, which is playing at the Flight Path Theatre from the 15th of June to the 2nd of July. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So the two of you have an extensive background in the independent theatre scene. So Carly, you're a director and a producer. You're the founder of Theatre Travels. You're also the artistic director of Theatre Travels, which is awesome. With them, you've produced 19 shows and you've directed 9, which is a massive feat. And then you've also created and produced the Intermission Festival as well. So you've been all over the place.
It's been a busy few years, absolutely. I launched 2018. November 2018 was the first Theatre Travels production. So the Sweet Science of Bruising marks the 20th production and my 10th directing for Theatre Travels. So excellent. Yeah, it's been a busy 4 years.
I love nice round numbers, so that's really special.
Me too. It just worked out so well. And it's the biggest show that we've done. The only other show that was of such a large scale was the very first one. So if this is 20, I can't wait to see what like the 50th show is. Like, what an anniversary.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
I can't either. This show's huge.
And Sonya, so you've worked with multiple theatres. You've worked with the New Theatre, Theatre Travels, She Shakespeare, Genesian Theatre, Vox Theatre. You've also appeared in short films and several feature films. And you've worked with Bus Stop Films on the award-winning Workmate and Heartbreak and Beauty. So you've also been very, very busy.
Yes, a little bit of everything. I like to keep myself busy and, you know, downtime is not a thing for me, I don't think, anymore. But I know it's a beautiful industry, and so trying to do as much as possible as you can in all different facets, I think, is really important. So that's what I do.
I totally agree. There is no such thing as downtime for me. I come home from my money job, and then I come here, and this is like my other job, where I just like
job that fuels the
exactly.
soul.
This is the soul, cherishing job.
Heart
this
job.
one.
I have heart job and head job.
Yeah.
That's where I split it.
Yeah, I think that's actually the best way to describe it. So with the two of you, give us a brief rundown of your history. I know I kind of talked quickly about a few things, but talk about where did your passion come from?
You gave a good summary there. I can tell you honestly, I've never wanted to do anything else. I was so lucky that my mum really exposed me to the theatre very early in life and has really made both theatre and traveling huge priorities in my upbringing. And so whenever either were possible, we were there. And this merging of different cultures and how people interpret stories has just long been a passion. And I grew up thinking that I had to be an actor. I think lots of people do. And only when I hit uni and an opportunity one day to direct popped up and I went, oh, I can try. Did that even cross my mind? And it was one of those things that the minute I started it, I was like, I think I can't stop. I think I'm stuck. And I read a great quote once that was, it's along the lines of, if you are thinking of being an actor and you can do anything else, do that. Because it's certainly not an easy industry, and particularly in the independent sector. And I think that what makes it so special is that I now have realized of myself and of all of those who surround me, we really can't do anything else. This is where our heart really, truly is. And I think that that's why, the more that the company does, the more I do, the more people I work with, things are becoming more and more successful because I'm realizing that I'm only surrounding myself with people for whom this is a reason, not just to get up in the morning. It's our everything. And that's the spirit you feel come to the stage with these shows. So to answer your question a little bit more, I don't know. I never wanted to do anything else is the true answer. And so in 2018, I launched Theatre Travels because I really wanted to see someone in Sydney do a 20th anniversary production of the Laramie Project. I loved the show. I had loved the show for years. It was the 20th year since Matthew Shepard was murdered. And I went, why is Sydney the only city not doing this? How do I make it happen? I'll do it. And so began a wild adventure. And so by 2019, we launched the No Intermission Festival. And that was a huge adventure. And it's so fulfilling in that it was designed particularly to create opportunities for emerging artists. And it was a great way to give a lot of people a new networking opportunity, a chance to really work on shows that would get fully funded and would be of professional scale, but in the independent sector and open to newcomers. And that really was a game changer for Theatre Travels. And because of that, COVID notwithstanding, this is the 20th show since November 2018. And I'm really proud of that. Through COVID, we still managed to get 7 shows up in 2020 and 2021.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yes, it is. It's been a busy few years. We've toured. It's just been such an exciting adventure. And I think what I love most about it is that as much I am such a planner, and I still can never plan what's coming next with this company. I never know. I just sort of follow the wind on this one. And so far it's working. So we'll keep doing it.
No, I think that's awesome. To do that many, especially throughout, our weird 2020, 2021 that we had, that takes a lot of, I don't think people understand how much that actually takes. I was working on committee of a small community theatre, and I know just from that perspective, how much that was pushback.
It's a lot of resilience and a lot of trust from those working with you that, if they stay committed, there will be something will come of it. And I'm so lucky. I mean, the 2020 No Intermission that became the 2021 No Intermission that then toured in 2022, one of the shows, no one left. They were cast in 2019 and we finished the show in 2022 with the same cast.
Did you have any similar things, Sonya, when throughout your experience with lockdown, were you cast in anything and you stayed on throughout?
The No Intermission Festival.
Oh, right.
That was actually, I was cast in 2019 for In Their Footsteps for a verbatim theatre piece about American women's experience during the Vietnam War, which was the first time I'd met Carly and had auditioned for Theatre Travel. So I was cast in 2019, got the phone call just before Christmas. I was like, yay, going to do this show. I'm so excited. And then 2020 happened and I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And so I think most artists, most actors throughout that whole lockdown period kind of had that weird sense of, wait, what what is my life now? I'm not rehearsing. I'm not doing anything. I'm not, how do I fulfill myself and how do I keep going? But I was very lucky that I had, I knew Carly was very open. She was like, this is happening. This play is going on. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it is happening. And so I was like, all right, well, cool. I'll hitch my wagon to that, and I'm on board. And we got it on, and we did a Sydney season. Then jokingly at the end of that, we were like, haha, when do we go on tour? And Carly was like, no, serious. Do you want to? So then we went to Canberra. Then we did a season at the Adelaide Fringe as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
It was remarkable. that was a little driving force, a little burning light throughout that entire dark time of being locked down as an artist. Yeah,
I think it is hard, and especially because I know people are shouting out, for obviously assistance from the government and things like that. And when I think it's such a weird, it was such a weird time that a lot of artists went through, where we go, oh, our literal life is gone. It's gone, And I know it was for a lot of other people as well, but I think for artists, it was a very hard time to find that sense of, what do I do now? Do I have to get a normal job and work the 9 to 5?
Do I have to become normal?
Yeah.
Very much so. It was a really, especially I think in the independent sector, because, I think that we were all hyper aware that government assistance was limited, as we all know it was, and that limited funding very rarely gets shared with independent. And for a lot of companies, mine included, quite a small business, because you're an arts business, but you're not quite big enough to fight with, we're near big enough to take on the funding of the Opera House, they needed it more. And so you're left totally alone in that. And so I think for the independent sector, that was especially true. There was a lot more uncertainty of, I think everyone always knew the industry would come back, that jobs would reappear, that audiences would one day go back. I don't think anyone questioned that. It was just, can I continue to play this game? Which is really tough when this is your entire life and this is your purpose. So I think that was probably that big fear. And then also just trying, I think, I don't know about other artists, certainly I was like, I need to find something creative. I'm going stir crazy because I don't have a creative outlet. And it's not like normally you can just go take a dance class or an acting class or something, but you couldn't do anything. I personally started a new Instagram account. That was my big creative outlet.
Oh, I have to ask you, you're not through my sunglasses, through my sunnies, are you?
Through my sunnies.
Oh, you are? No. Okay. Now, I have
that
to tell
was my COVID outlet.
That was my COVID outlet.
Oh
I started my one because I just came off working with Top Deck and Flight Center, so my thing was gone. I started, it was really bad. It was called Stin the Traveling Ginge, was mine. And yeah, I know, because I think I messaged you once.
That's hilarious. Oh my God. Wow, that's such a small world.
Yeah, because I think I saw you at a show once when I was reviewing, and I was like, is that Carly? No, can't be. Yeah, it's that funny.
That was my COVID alter ego. I was like, you know what? I needed to do something to just make myself go out and live my life again. And that was it's probably same as you. That was my grand solution was, I don't know, I'll try travel blogging. I've wanted to do it for years. Now I have time.
Yeah. Let's swing it back because that was such, I was like hilarious. Thinking it the entire time. I was like, I'm going to have to ask her. Let's swing it back to the Sweet Science of Bruising.
What a great segue.
So the Sweet Science of Bruising. Tell me about it, because I'm going to admit I don't know too much about it. Why this play for number 20?
I think that's a really great question. When I sat down so I found this play when I was in London pre-COVID, and I picked it up just because the picture on the front was really cool, and it was a perfect instance of judge a book by its cover. I was like, I'm interested. I'm intrigued by its title and its appearance. And so my relationship with this play was very accidental. From first read, when I read a play, my brain is constantly on, what is the call to action? What am I trying to, why do you see this? What do you achieve from seeing this as an audience member? And as soon as I read through this, it's set in 1869. It's a period piece. And yet every issue that we discuss is so relevant. It's completely a 2022 story. And so as soon as I realized that, I was like, well, there's the call to action. If we don't change the way we talk about these issues, we are still going to be discussing these things 200 years from now. And in this play, we're talking about women's equality, educational equality and opportunity, women's rights, domestic violence, abortion. We cover an awful lot in 2.5 hours. And yet it's done through boxing and these gorgeous big period costumes. It's a light night out, but the more you sit down and think about it, there's nothing light about it, particularly for Sonya's character arc.
And Sonya, what's been your experience with it? And can you tell us like a little bit about your character? Don't give too much away, but like a little bit about your character.
I also came across this play in 2018 in a completely different way to Carly. I was listening to a podcast and they were interviewing one of the original actresses who was at that time rehearsing for this show. And they were talking about, as a female on stage, being violent, being angry, being physical, and showing that and kind of almost reveling in the physicality of being a woman doesn't get shown very often. And she was talking about, learning how to box and how to punch. I'm like, what is this play? So I looked it up, found it, read it, and was like, oh my lordy, I would love if somebody in Australia could do this, but it's never going to happen. It's a British story, set in England. It's set in the Victorian period. It's got 10 characters. There is no way Independent Theatre is going to do this. Cut to, again, probably the same night when we joked about taking in their footsteps on tour, talking about plays that we love and that we want to do. And I was sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, I read this play about this set in the Victorian era, about these women boxing. And Carly's like, Sweet Science of Bruising. I'm like, what? How has this happened? And for me, it's also, I'm also a budding historian. I'm currently studying history and my focus is 19th century female stories. And so to have acting and history kind of come together in one piece is almost like a dream come true.
If I can interrupt for a second there, it's a dream come true to have someone, we have like a resident historian. Any question I have, oh my gosh, we're like doing a scene. I'm like, Sonya, were cotton balls invented yet? Okay, thank you. Keep acting.
That does happen. It does happen.
Every day.
But I find it quite interesting because the stories that we hear of the 19th century of women are often suffragette stories. Brilliant. We get the votes for women stories. We don't get the story of the lower classes, of the working class, unless it's how horrific their lives are, how awful it was, how violent and short their lives were. We don't get to see the human side of the working class very often. It's changing. There are TV shows and things that are coming out, but it's a slow process. And then on the other side of that, which is where my character comes in, I play Anna Lamb. She is a member of the relatively newly formed middle class, which was emerging in the 19th century. And her story arc is really about the false facade of respectability. And although people can look put together and speak well and have everything that they possibly desire, underneath that there is a dark current of potentially sometimes violence, of more control being taken away from their lives, this kind of the being forced to fit that domestic angel sphere that was lauded, especially in the 19th century. And, the Sweet Science of Bruising covers all of this, plus a myriad of other things, which is just really fascinating for the audience. I hope when people come and see the show, they're going to be thoroughly entertained by women in corsets doing boxing matches. Brilliant.
Really entertaining.
But also, as Carly was saying, it is a call to action to make them go, look, this is what we were dealing with in 1869. And this is what we're still dealing with in 2022. How have we not evolved? How have we not changed? How is legislation not changed? Why are we still? And you see, especially when it comes to the topic of women's bodies and body autonomy, you see that the pictures of older ladies going, I can't believe I'm still protesting this. And it's the same thing, it's been going on forever.
The other thing that really drew me to this script was that it was a play that had 4 female protagonists. And my big thing with Theatre Travels has always been to tell really authentic and whole female stories, because in 2018, the reason I started a company, aside from wanting to do a show, I could have done that without a company, but I wanted the company behind me because there were very few opportunities for female directors to come up, very few opportunities for female crew members to get an in. And the stories, if you cast your mind back to 2018, what we were constantly hearing about every main stage company was that the female characters were side pieces, they were inauthentic, they were nothing. And I thought, well, that's not fair. I'm not having that. So let's change it. Let's make a company that wants to do female-driven stories and that wants to specifically focus on women in leadership in the theatre, and how can we foster that and how can we grow together. And so that was why Theatre Travel started.
Well, you can tell, because you speak with so much passion about it, so you can tell, how much, this is, you're so driven by it, which is so lovely to hear. Before I let you guys go back to your rehearsals, I just have one question that I want both your opinions on. I'd like to know, for those people who are currently in university or soon to be graduating, or people who just want to get into the industry, how do you make art and survive in the independent theatre world?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is that you surround yourself with really good people and that you network, but not because you want to get a job. You network because you want to find your people, and that you build your own circle because that circle will absolutely be your ticket through. Not that you should be riding on the coattails of someone else, but that you cannot do this industry independently. You can't go alone. You need to have a solid resource of other people, whether that's because as a group you make an amazing team of a director, a sound designer, a lighting designer, and you're working together on every project. But that's one approach. Another approach is just to know who your support system is, because it's really not very easy. It can be very lonely and isolating. You definitely notice that you are drifting into new social circles that are completely your caste because you don't have time for everyone you knew before that show. It definitely has a hint of social isolation to it. And yet you do it because you know that everyone else around you, and this is, in my opinion, the most important thing, you have to know that everyone else around you believes in this, wants this, and drives this as much as you do. And then you have the logistics of, obviously, you need to be able to eat. So you need to work and you need to manage your time and you need to find projects that properly can accommodate, both sections of your life. But life is so much more exciting when you're doing what really you're so passionate about, I think. And I think those sacrifices more than pay off. But for me, it would be find the people.
Great answer. I like
Such
it.
a good answer. Now I'm supposed to answer?
Oh, surely you have some more. Mine's a bit of like a highfalutin answer, isn't it?
I agree. Surrounding yourself with a support group who understands your madness, I think, is really important. Because independent theatre especially is all-consuming. When you're in that project, there is no time for anything else. So kind of surrounding yourself with people who are either you're doing the show with or who understand that, no, I'm not going to see you for the next 3 months, but I love you. My husband is one of those people. He's just gotten used to it. But I also think, there is a balance of, you can put 100% of yourself into theatre, just theatre, nothing else. Great. But I think, especially as an actor, finding something outside of the theatre world to throw your passion behind is really important. Like for me, it's my history, my studies, and it makes you a more rounded person, a more interesting person, and a person who, isn't tunnel visioned on this is all I can do. Because when you hit something like a global pandemic and it's what you can't do, it helps you survive the times where you're not working, of which, as we all know, in independent theatre can be anywhere between a month and 2 years. So I think support is very important. Your group of friends, your loved ones around you can support you in your madness, but also finding other ways to release that madness into the world is a really, really important thing to do.
And then when theatre goes from being your hobby and becomes your career, you need a new hobby, or you're not going to feel that you lose something. And so finding a new hobby when you realize that you've done the ultimate, right? You've managed to turn your passion into your profession. There's nothing better than that. That is huge goal, but don't lose the other side of yourself. So when that hobby goes, you've got to replace it. I highly recommend Instagram. It's worked really well for the two of us. Travel blogging's such a vibe.
It works. I was coming back. I was watching YouTube videos. I was looking at the algorithm. I figured out how the algorithm worked, and I was just like, I'm in it, man. This is good.
My Instagram is literally just a place I put photos of my cat.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
There's also a spot for that.
Yeah. My whole thing was I'll learn how to photo edit, and that will be creative, and then I'll have a creative outlet through COVID, and that will be the best thing ever. But I haven't learned how to photo edit. I've just learned that Lightroom is an easy app.
Yeah, very easy apps out there. Just chuck them in there, you're good to go.
Yeah, and then if you buy other people's presets, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, very simple stuff. Well, Carly, Sonya, thank you so much for jumping on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to the two of you and getting your insights. You filled me with a lot of passion, which is great. Sometimes, that flame burns down. You just got to, pick yourself up again. It's beautiful.
There is always something to blow those embers back into a flame. Always.
Absolutely. And we love what we do.
Yeah, and I think that's great. You got to love what you do. Well, the Sweet Science of Bruising, like I said, plays from the 15th of June to 2nd of July. You can get tickets at Human Tix or by heading over to flightpaththeatre.org. So I suggest getting on it now because it sounds like this is a sellout show just waiting to happen.
From your lips.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much and have fun at your rehearsals.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. We'll see you at the show.
We have 2 double passes to give away to the Sweet Science of Bruising for any performance of your choice. All you need to do is head to the giveaway section of our website, theatrethoughtsoz.online, select the Sweet Science of Bruising giveaway and fill out the form. Entries close Monday the 13th of June at 11:59 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Terms and conditions apply. Refer to our website for more information. The word is out, the Theatre Thoughts Monthly is here, and it's your chance to get exclusive giveaways, podcast episodes, reviews, and more direct to your inbox. Don't wait until next month. Get this month's Theatre Thoughts Monthly now. It takes 2 seconds to sign up. Simply head to the link in this episode's description and select the Theatre Thoughts Monthly option to fill in your details. It's that simple. You'll receive links direct to this month's edition of Charlotte's Cheap Thrills, early access to an exclusive giveaway only for Theatre Thoughts subscribers, and the early goss on our next massive star on the podcast. Now, let's get back to today's episode. Okay, welcome back to part 2 of our 2-part episode. We are talking with another independent theatre artist who's been very heavily involved in the Sydney theatre scene and beyond. They are an award-winning director. They worked on Angels in America Part 1 and 2 for Red Lion and Apocalypse, which they received 3 Sydney Theatre Awards for. And they also directed a queer reading of Mary Zimmerman's Metamorphosis, which also received 4 Sydney Theatre Awards. Please welcome to the podcast, Dino Dimitriadis. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You are more than welcome. It's great to talk to you because you have a great history and experience in the independent theatre scene. So I'd love to get your insight on your journey.
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, let's start with who you are for those who aren't familiar with your work and where your passion sort of came from.
Sure. So I've been making independent theatre for 12 years. I sort of started making independent work in the community theatre space, believe it or not, when I was very young, and got to experience what it was to make theatre, got to learn a lot of things. And then over the years started a company, started Apocalypse, to be able to make works that I thought weren't being represented on stage. It wasn't just about giving myself an opportunity to sort of make certain works, but to actually start building a community of artists who are interested in a certain type of work, or work that wasn't easily being programmed. And over those years, I've done a lot of work with that company. I've also worked on some subsidized stages, and I also work as a producer and curator across the sector as well. I guess Increasingly, my work is very queer focused. The last sort of 5-6 years, most of the projects I'm attached to are driven by queer artists, have a sort of queer lens on them. And that is something, as a queer person and as a gender diverse person, that I am very interested in. Finding more pathways for not just the content, but for those artists to be working on the stage.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially for as our like theatre scene becomes much more diverse, to have those voices and to have those lens really adds, well, flavour and diversity, which is exactly what it needs, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's about, I think in the last few years, we've seen so much conversation around the D word, diversity and representation. But really what I think the stage has been trying to do is it's actually be reflective of society. I think we see diversity as such a conscious process, and it is, because it's so overdue. So there's needed to be a sort of concerted effort to think about strategies and ways to create pathways. But at the end of the day, what it is we make theatre to tell stories and to bring people together, and the content on the stage, should reflect the audiences in front of it, and those audiences and that content should represent, the world beyond the theatre. And that's the move we're slowly making. The challenge there is the structures need to be in place to support those underrepresented voices that have been excluded for so long. And that's the challenge from a internal sector perspective.
Yeah. Well, you're currently working on Cleansed by Sarah Kane, which goes from the 9th of June to the 25th of June. So where does Cleansed come into that perspective and that kind of motivation for you?
Look, Cleansed is a work that would not be touched really by a subsidised company. It is a work that is very rarely staged. Kane was a playwright who operated largely in the 90s and late 90s when this particular play was written. Wrote 5 plays, and took her life after she wrote the fifth play. Her body of work is very provocative and very complex to stage. And even within that body of work, this particular play, Cleansed, is the least produced. It is extreme, but it is also presents really significant challenges in bringing it to the stage. And so in a way, it sort of captures what, for me, independent theatre is for and can do. I've never seen the work I make on the independent stage as, and let's really define what independent is. At the end of the day, it means unsubsidized. I mean, I don't sort of see main stage and independent. What we do independently is often main stage quality.
Yeah.
It's really coming down to the resource allocation. But when it comes to content, because we're, operating in this case in a smaller venue, and because we are operating in the structure we are, it really comes down to risk. And this is a work that has so many levels of high risk attached to it that it wouldn't be done if it wasn't being done independently.
Yeah, no, I agree. Why do you think she's had such this legacy that is so, well, I mean, kind of still relevant in a lot of people's lives? And why is Cleanse not performed? Is it because of its, its provocative nature and its intense themes?
I think so. I think with 448, it's a very extreme mental work. It's ultimately about mental health and mental illness. And obviously the psychological demands on its cast are significant when it comes to entering a psychological space that work demands. With something like Cleanse, you've got that extreme psychological and emotional space, but you also have artists asked to simulate sex. There is extreme violence in the work. There is drug consumption. There is full nudity in Cleansed. The demands pile up. And for all those reasons, and I guess also the conceptual framework of that play, it's not done. Cleansed is so open to interpretation, like so much of Kane's work. And really, she gives extraordinary provocations in Cleansed that require the artists working on it to work out what it is they want to do with that play. I am not doing a revival of Cleansed. I am coming to it to make a show for 2022 with a company of queer artists, and we are saying something using that text. The sort of irony of all of this is I think that Cleansed is her most hopeful work.
Right.
And it has a tenderness and a beauty to it that, for me, actually overshadows the extremity of the work and the sort of darker moments. And I hope people can come and see the production, because what we've not done is, it's not a horror show, and it's not something that is an exercise in presenting Sarah Kane. We've actually written a love letter with this production.
Wow, that's beautiful. And that sounds very unique as well.
Yeah, you sort of come to it and you've got to decide, what, apart from the fact that it's really staged, and you've got to really ask yourself, why are you doing it? And I think that, the thing about any Kane work is it operates on several planes. There's a plane of realism and sort of naturalism. There are real things that are happening. But Kane's goal, I think, especially in a work like Cleansed, is to essentially interrogate what the experience of the human soul is under extreme conditions. And what she recognized so brilliantly is that it is impossible to put the human soul on a stage.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation? So what she does is she uses the body as a metaphor for the soul. So if a character's in an act of sexual intimacy, it's not just about the sex. If something's happening to a character with violence, it's not about the act of violence. She is using the body as a side of experience to basically scratch at what the soul is going through. And it's that tension that Cleansed explores, which is why the demand on the bodies of the actors is so extreme in a work like that. And to your earlier question about, why does she have this kind of history? Why is she, I think at the time she was part of a movement in theatre that was really interrogating what risk in the theatre looked like and what theatre could say as a live medium.
Yeah.
And, she gained this, reputation, and I think largely because she took her life. I'm sort of not interested in that whole baggage of the suicide and, this kind of, I think at the end of the day, you have this astonishing playwright whose 5 works. I can't tell you what it's like to think it's great and then be in a rehearsal room and actually realize how many clues and how much she's built into the work.
Really? Okay.
It's, there's times when a scene's not working and you go, this just rhythmically feels odd. And then you look at the script and it goes, oh, there's someone strokes someone's hair, or there's a silence there, and a silence is longer than a pause. And you do it, and suddenly it fixes the whole moment.
Wow. They must be like really special moments, as like from a director's perspective.
It's really special, and it's kind of you really feel a connection to what the playwright was intending. And in the absence of being able to talk to the playwright, and there are those magical moments that you go, oh, I'm getting closer to really understanding that whilst I can bring my vision and reinterpret, that I still have to honor this text as an astonishing document that gives us the blueprint for how to approach this world.
Yeah.
And I think the significant thing is that Kane was so ahead of her time.
Yeah, very much so.
Very much so. And I think finally the time has caught up with Kane.
Isn't that interesting? Because like, you're right, she does, like, a lot of her themes and a lot of her work, especially mental illness, as nowadays it's in the zeitgeist in terms of our conversations. It's becoming more recognized, which is so important. I have a big passion for it. And like, not even like 10 years ago, it's not even talked about. It's like pushed to the side, or there's all these conversations. And I love that comment, actually, that the Times have actually caught up to Kane. I think that's perfect.
And it very much feels it. And I think now you kind of look at reviving this production in the context of all these issues that feel so sort of timely. And it's extraordinary to kind of see how different it is to experience this work even than what it would have been, like you say, 5 years ago.
I want to talk about a little bit more about the independent scene. So I guess what I've been talking about with other artists is why independent artists and making sure we foster the independent scene. And I love that you defined it earlier as well. I think a lot of people don't think about it in that sense. Why it's important to focus on this sector in our theatrical society.
Well, the unfunded stages have driven all the conversations that have made their way to the funded stages. Diversity did not start in our subsidized companies. Representing cultural diversity did not start there. Gender diversity did not start there. Risk-taking in form and did not start in our subsidized companies. Queer work, which has now made its way into our subsidized larger stages, started in the unsubsidized stages. So it's been that cauldron of risk-taking and things that the independent, in the sense of, untethered to certain partnerships or realities, and also unsubsidized, has been able to drive a lot of the conversations that have made their way into the sector. It's always bottom up when it comes to driving the content. And you take someone like even Kane as an example. I mean, she's had a couple of subsidized productions, largely of Blasted, another one of her plays, and sometimes 448, but even that's deemed too dark for most subsidized companies and too fragmented. So much of the riskier work that's being done on the subsidized stages is because there's been a culture created for it on the unsubsidized stages. Yeah. So in one respect, it's a place for new and I guess early career artists to be seen, to try things, to evolve. But, for me as an artist who does also work on the subsidized stage, it's working independently and working in this context is where I take the biggest risk. Yeah. It's where I'm not concerned about having to deal with a 1,000-seat venue or having to hold a season of subscribers over a period of time. And so it's about risk and it's about play, I think, ultimately.
I think this is what I'm hearing a lot, which I love, is that idea of play, that you can play around with stuff. You can take these risks. You can foster these new ideas, which are reflective of who we are and who are who are the people that are putting their bums on the seats for you.
Yeah, exactly. And you find your own sort of audience for the kind of work, because there is, I think theatre has fundamentally changed post-pandemic, or pandemic present, however you kind of want to see it. Yeah. And, it's audiences, we are audiences. You and I are audiences. I make decisions about what I go and see. And I think there is a real craving for content that isn't just entertaining, that sometimes is provocative, that is challenging, that is part of a bigger night out. There's so many reasons why people might now kind of choose to go to the theatre, and that is shifting. I think it has shifted.
I think, and I've also said, I've said something similar to what you were saying about after the pandemic or whatever you want to kind of call this time period that we're in, that this change is coming. And I kind of was thinking about the repetition of history after plays and even the Black Plague. If you want to go all the way back to the Black Plague, there was the Renaissance, and I hope that we're in our Renaissance now of change.
Yeah.
And rebirth, which is, fingers crossed, that's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the thing that people always say is the theatre's been, going for 2,000 years, or Western theatre very specifically, because it's been going for a lot longer in other cultures. But, it survived this long, it will keep surviving. But, there's so many things they don't factor into that. They don't factor the ecological crisis that we're living in. And they also importantly don't factor in technology. I mean, how we're consuming content digitally now did not exist 200 years ago, 50 years ago, let alone 2,000 years ago.
Exactly.
So we're in a reckoning moment. And I think the face of theatre is going to shift tectonically over the next 5 years.
I'm very excited to see how it does. I'm a little bit hesitant, but I'm also I'm very excited at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
So I want to ask you how to make art. This is the question I asked our other guests. I want to know, for university students who are, or people who are nearing the end of their career or wanting to get involved in theatre, how do you make art and survive in the theatre industry?
Yeah, what a question.
Yeah, that's what they said. They said the same thing.
Yeah, look, it's an incredible industry to work in, but it is a very tough industry to work in. And I think, the biggest disservice someone could make is say, oh yeah, it's all great. It's not. It's difficult. And it's difficult to kind of find a sustainable career in this industry. I think my advice or my sort of suggestions for thinking about it, especially for earlier career artists, is one, I think it's really important to not feel like you have to prove yourself by replicating other things. You are more likely to carve a place when you find your point of view and your voice and you explore that. There are other people doing those other things. So it is your perspective and what you have to say about the world that's ultimately going to be the thing that is interesting. And sort of piggybacking on from that, this idea of, for me, what's really important and what has allowed me to keep working for so long in the theatre is broadening my understanding of what a sustainable practice is. I think some people think success is kind of doing a show here and then being on the STC stage and then, but, there's so many people who have done the STC stage and now are not working. They had a moment, I think it's about a sustainable practice. And I think that means that it's completely fine to be multi-hatted and to have different ways of navigating income streams. I mean, one of the biggest reasons that I'm able to be a practicing director and do shows every year is because I work substantially as a producer and a curator. So I do a lot of work as a producer and curator, and that allows me to then explore my directing practice without the strain of feeling like I should only be directing, but also without the strain of having to take every gig, because I can now choose the directing gigs based on what am I exploring? What do I want to say? It isn't just about directing. It's actually about the art. And so that's what I would kind of suggest. And my third and final kind of piece of advice is, find your collaborators. This is not a solo art form. Directing is very isolating and probably not as isolating as being a playwright, but it's a very sort of lonely place because whilst you collaborate with a lot of people, you're also having to carry a lot and conceive a lot, and it's a certain kind of space. But the collaborations that I have with my creative team, some of which I've worked with over years and years, and then the process and the collaboration with artists and performers is, I guess why I keep doing it, because it's those relationships and those friendships. But find your collaborators, find the people whose ideas and view of the world sort of speaks to yours, and also reach out to people. I say this all the time when I speak of things or I speak to students. I'm like, email people. Some of the biggest opportunities or things that I have gotten is because I've made a really bold ask and a cold approach to a maker that really excites me. And I know that if someone does the same to me, and they have, I'm going to engage with that because I know where I had to come from. So, we are actually very approachable.
I sometimes fall into that trap, and I kind of get a little bit hesitant to go up and talk to people in foyers. And I've had people say to me, "You got to just get over it. Just go and do it. They're not scary." Yeah. But I think that's great. That's a great answer. Thank you so much. You speak with such passion and intelligence, which is so nice to hear. And I think it will make for a great episode, which is good.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been lovely chatting.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Cleansed by Sarah Kane is on from the 9th of June to the 25th of June at the Old Fitz. Tickets can be found at redlineproductions.com/cleansed. Dino, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for the chat.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
A massive thank you to Carly Fisher and Daniel Cottier for helping to organise today's episode. A big thank you to Carly Fisher, Sonya Kerr and Dino Dimitriadis for joining us on the episode. Tickets for the Sweet Science of Bruising can be bought by searching flightpaththeatre.org. You can find out more about theatre travels by going to theatretravels.org. Tickets for Cleansed by Sarah Kane can be bought by searching redlineproductions.com.au/cleansed. All the links and information from today's conversations can be found in the episode description on wherever you get your podcasts. That's it for another episode of the Theatre Thoughts Podcast. If you're looking to see more theatre in 2022 and consider yourself to be a writer, why not join our growing team of reviewers? We are currently on the lookout for new writers in Sydney and Melbourne to join our team. You'll gain great experience in writing reviews and expressing your opinions, plus you get to see theatre shows on us. If this sounds like you, email us at theatrethoughtsteam@outlook.com or by contacting us on our website, theatrethoughtsoz.online. And we'll see you next time here on the Theatre Thoughts Podcast.